Okay, hi everybody. So, our presentation regarding our portfolios and our group work. So, I'm here with Kari, Tuuli, and Hong. And next slide, please. So, we have made two different portfolios. Is with initial investments of 1 million euros. Other one is with higher risk, and the other one with way smaller risk with the portfolio. And instead of Investopedia, we have used Kauppalehti own portfolio platform. So our first portfolio that has a higher risk, we will focus more on stock markets. Historically, stock markets have generated good returns, even though there is risks involved there. Of course, we will seek alpha through our stock picks, and the base of the portfolio will be allocated to passive world index fund that offers kind of guaranteed market returns from the whole world stock market with low costs. Allocation to this fund will be 50% of invested funds. Recent market hypothesis states that share prices reflect all information and consistent alpha generation is impossible, meaning that buying undervalued stock would be impossible. Therefore, it would be impossible to beat the market. And based on that theory, our base investment should be a wise choice. As we do not fully agree with the theory, we do not allocate everything to this one fund. 40% of the portfolio will be allocated to other funds that I will tell more about later on, and 10% is allocated to straight stock picks, divided to 10 Finnish companies, and the initial investments were made on 11th of October. On this portfolio, we will not have short selling and are expecting returns of at least 20% annually. Next slide, please. So we have allocated 100,000 euros to straight stock picks. We are focusing on a Finnish stock market, as there is firms that we are in contact in our everyday life and can make observations about them daily. Therefore, it is a bit easier to evaluate them and potentially find undervalued firms than, for example, from US markets. We have looked for companies that currently hold a big growth possibilities, especially on a short term, either by gaining market share as Oma Säästöpankki or has a new innovation as Nightingale that offers new kind of a blood test solution to detect diseases. Next slide, please. So here you can see the full list of our stock picks. Nightingale, Sievi Capital, Arvio, Kamux, Rovio, Tokmanni Group, Tietoevry, Oma Säästöpankki, Terveystalo, and Honka Rakenne. Then different companies from very varying field of sectors, but each of them have in common that they should have big growth possibilities in the horizon. And similar allocation were given to each of the stock pick. Next slide, please. As I said earlier, the base of the portfolio is on the passive world index fund. It will generate stable market returns and give a maximum diversification over stock market. Then 25% of the portfolio has been allocated to Nordea Global Real Estate Fund, which will give us an investment to different asset class without the risk associated to privately made real estate investment. It will also add our diversification as this fund also invests globally. Then our last fund pick for this higher risk portfolio is Evli Ruotsi Pienyhtiöt, which is a fund that invests to Swedish small cap companies. It suits our investment plan as it also looks for bigger returns from smaller growing companies, kind of as our straight stock investments. It will also once again give us diversification to a different market and in this case also to a different currency. Now Tuuli will continue with the other portfolio.
Yes, hi everyone on my behalf as well. So I will be introducing the second portfolio. And as already mentioned, the second portfolio, we made a little bit less riskier portfolio and also very well diversified. And as funds are considered less risky compared to stocks, the portfolio is stressed more into funds. And the portfolio includes 10 different Finnish company stocks and 3 different funds as well. And the initial investments made were 100,000 euros to the stocks and 900,000 euros to the funds. And as with the portfolio one, the initial investments were made on the 11th of October 2021. And next slide, thank you. And first we're going to look into the stocks part of the portfolio. So the initial investment, as mentioned, was 100,000 euros. And the stocks include, so to say, safer stocks and a few riskier stocks. And we chose companies from varying fields in order to ensure diversification. And as the list shows in the below, the companies are mainly dealing within insurances, finance, telecommunications, technology, housing investment, forest and engineering industry. And here is the overview of the stocks part of the portfolio. And here in the weight part, we can kind of see the or expect which are the less safer options and which have more possible returns for the future. And probably many Finns noticed that there are a lot of large Finnish companies here, and the largest ones we decided to invest the largest sum in are the Elisa, which is one of the biggest teleoperators operating especially in Finland, but also in the other Nordic countries, and also the Metsä Outotec, which has a large patent portfolio. That's why it is very potential investment regarding this portfolio. And then we also have Nordea Bank, which also we decided to purchase a lot of stocks from. That is one of the largest financial companies in the Finnish and the Northern Europe market, and then also the Sampo A. And the few with the less weight are the Wärtsilä and also the Revenio Group, which are considered a little bit more riskier in comparison to these very large Finnish companies. Next slide, please. And then we move on to the funds part. So the initial investment made was the 900,000 euros. And we chose 3 different funds, all provided by Nordea Bank PLC. And the Nordea uses a grading between 0 to 7, which tells about the fund's riskiness. And all the 3 funds chosen for the portfolio had the grading 3 or less. So in Nordea website, they recommended these funds as less riskier options. And most of the funds, the largest part includes fixed income investments. And 2 of the funds also have small portion of shares and a very small portion of alternatives in them as well. But as mentioned, the greatest emphasis is on fixed income investments to kind of ensure stable stable returns. The next slide, and here is the table of the funds part of the portfolio. So we have 3 different funds. The main weight is in Nordea Savings Interest Fund, which only invests in fixed income investments. And then the 2 others, the Nordea Premium Careful and the Nordea Savings 15 funds, include mainly fixed income investments and a smaller portion of shares, and also a very minimal portion of alternatives as well. And for this portfolio, regarding the effect of inflation to the portfolio too, we are quite confident that the performance will remain quite good, even though regardless of the inflation. And the inflation tends to have higher impact on growth stocks, which are a minority in our stocks part of the portfolio. And most of the stocks are considered to be value stocks, which value are less affected by rising interest rates. Whereas in comparison to the funds part, a lot of the funds include fixed income investments, and these can be impacted by the inflation, and there we could definitely see a larger impact compared to the stocks part. And even though the funds could be very well affected by the inflation, in Finland at least, for disposal accounts and for savings account, the regular interests are very low, very close to zero. So even though the inflation could affect dramatically to the funds, it is still considered much more profitable to have the money invested into funds rather than a regular savings account or even disposal account. And the estimated return for the second portfolio is approximately 3 to 4% for the time that we have. And we do consider the portfolio to be more of a long-term portfolio, and we don't, at least for now, consider making any changes for the portfolio. If though we would do some changes for the portfolio too, we would probably decrease the amount of the riskier stocks. And next.
Hello everyone. It's my responsibility to deliver you the current macro data that can affect to our investment. So to start with it, I will start with the CPI, which is the inflation indicators in Finland. Currently in September, it's been reported with an increasing annual change like 2.5%, which is quite considerably change. And also with the news that Euro area annual inflation up to 3.4%, which is considerably high. So which the CPI increases this much, it might affect negatively to our investment and also our market return. And this is the inflation rate in the European that I got it from the OECD website. And as you can see here, Turkey is the country has the highest inflation rate currently. And Finland still, even though it's increasing, but it still look stable in European, and there's even country with the deflation. So another interesting thing that I found that here currently now inflation also a problem in USA because their consumer price rise more than expected in energy cost surge, and it's been recorded that it's now the inflation in USA is like more than 5%, and it's quite the same like developing countries, which is quite dangerous. And also the investor in USA, they are watching about the FCI, which is the financial condition index, because the FCI is a kind of index, as you can see here in this chart. It's this white inputs, and the S&P 500 index is the blue one here. So whatever, when there is a financial crisis, when there's an financial crisis, the FCI always high. Like in 2008 or in Corona time, the FCI always high, and then the market will go very slow and down, or even it will be crash. So now the FCI again seem like going up again. So everyone is really cautious in USA now. And also another thing is about the taxes. Because of Corona, the tax revenue of Finland decreased by 1.9%. However, the tax increases in the sectors like soft drink, pharmacy, insurance premium, tobacco, alcohol, or vehicle. So if we invest in this kind of sector, investor also need to be careful. And another thing concerned me is about the Finnish public debt, which is now very high. It increases because of the corona, and also the current government debt of Finland is almost like 70% of the country's GDP. So every time there's an increase in public debt, and it seems like the trend will be increase in interest rate, and the stock market return will decrease. So the advice is that we should invest more in the real assets like commodities, real estate, or treasury inflation protected securities. And another risk also mentioned is the currency fluctuation, which is the euro fears used to happen because of Greece ban indebted cases, or also the European breakup fears, which devaluate the euro currency a lot, like 20%. And also Brexit and Corona pandemic also might be a threat to devaluate our currency, and of course it affects negatively to our investment return.
Okay, thanks, Ruby. In the end, we have a short introduction to Finnish housing market and as an investment opportunity. First, we have a short look at the pricing development, and as we can see, and as we Finns probably know already in advance, there's a big difference between big cities, for instance, the Helsinki area, capital area, and other parts of the country. We can see that development pretty clearly on the right-hand side in the charts. Lately, Corona has affected something, and Hypo housing market update that's made by the Hypo, let's say, association has forecasted that the further price acceleration is not forecasted at this moment. Next. And we found two statistics that can be had in the background when one develops investigation. First one is made by Finnish Landlord Association, Suomen vuokranantajat in Finnish, and we have got the results here from the last year and this year. And we can see also here that the big cities are mostly represented on the top, especially this year, but the ranking doesn't totally correlate, let's say, the size of the city. And on the left-hand side, we can see the different factors that the Landlord Association has used when making the statistics. Then on the next slide, please, we see a different angle to the same thing. This was made by certain private investor we found in the internet. We have used different factors in this calculations, and we can see here that there are a little bit more, let's say, smaller cities represented on the top. For instance, Rovaniemi, which is, although of course the biggest city in the Lapland, but doesn't belong to the big cities of Finland. And here we can conclude that statistics can be considered only as one aspect when making the strategy. Personal judgment is seen and considered very important. Typical target of the investors in this area is roughly 4 to 5%. And the other strategy aspects that one could consider, these are only examples, of course, is that whether you want to go for new housing or old apartment, whether you use loan as leverage, and as also indicated before, careful background study is really important. And the statistics, as again said, is only one aspect in this consideration. And on the right-hand side, we have listed pretty typical risks that everyone faces when making the strategy. These are pretty general and can be seen in other investment areas as well. Maybe we can name, for instance, the yhtiövastike risk as one special for this area, and maybe the possible decoration needs that can come up, especially with an older apartment. Then we go to the next slide, please. We had a question whether personal house dwelling can be seen as investment. And this is only a short introduction, but maybe makes you think and consider then this more carefully if you're interested in this. First of all, as much as 70% of us Finns own a dwelling. The people typically don't hold their own house as an investment. But then there are certain, let's say, perspectives how own dwelling can be seen as an investment. Firstly, it is pretty obvious, is that could you please put the last slide again? Now, firstly, the selling of the house can turn into being profitable if your selling price is greater than the purchasing price. In Finland, there's a rule of 2 years for tax-free selling in this kind of cases. And secondly, you can use your dwelling as a guarantee to get loan for other investments you are interested in. You can rent your house, which is also pretty obvious. And typically, the bank loans in Finland, which might be the case in other countries as well, but at least here, they allow 3 months for you. And that's the way you can get, let's say, assets for other investments, if that's what you're interested in. And then there's a concept of converted loan that can be used to get you assets for other investments as well. And all in all this kind of, let's say, tools and means give you freedom in your movements in your personal life, depending on your, let's say, life situation at a certain point of time. And then finally, we have some words in the last slide about forests. And this also is a short introduction. This would be an interesting case, but maybe you can use that as as a way for further research or study. First of all, forests, because they, of course, they grow regardless of the development in other economical areas. It's a good way to diversify your portfolio. For instance, in the situations where interests are low or risks are high. And as said earlier, we have seen really small correlation between the price of forest land with other economic development in our country. And good forest care and effective acquisition of land can further, let's say, increase your benefits in these investments. The total return last year was about 3%, although there are certain differences between areas. And how can you do these investments? Of course, you can directly acquire land, but there are two other ways. This second one is a Finnish phenomena. It's called yhteismetsä. You can maybe translate it like I have done here, common forests. You can buy shares in these common forests. These are pretty typical, especially here in North Finland. And today there are various funds that are specialized in this area. And on the right-hand side, we have gathered some statistics about this. And on the top, we can see that the total return has been roughly between 2 and 4% in Finland, excluding the changes in carrying prices, which are set forth below. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our presentation.